The scream that pierced the Montana twilight made Nathan O'Brien's hand drop to his Colt before his mind caught up to his instincts. He pulled his mare to a halt near the abandoned stretch of railroad track outside Butte, listening hard through the gathering dusk. The sound came again, not quite a scream this time, but something close, raw and desperate, coming from the old boxcar that sat rusted on a forgotten siding 100 yards off the main line. It was September 1883, and Nathan had been riding for 3 days straight from the Dakota Territory, tracking a horse thief who had stolen 6 head from the ranch where he worked. The thief's trail had gone cold somewhere near Anaconda, and Nathan had been heading back when he heard the sound. Most men would have kept riding. Montana Territory was full of abandoned things, forgotten places where trouble nested like hornets in rotting wood. But Nathan's mother had raised him better than that, even if she had been dead these past 10 years. He dismounted, ground tying his mare well away from the boxcar, and approached on foot with his hand near his gun. The door of the railcar hung half open, swaying slightly in the evening breeze that carried the smell of coming winter down from the mountains. Nathan could see a faint glow of light through the gap, the flicker of what might be a candle or a small flame. "I am armed and I am coming in," he called out, his voice steady. "If you mean harm, you will regret it." A long silence followed, then a woman's voice, hoarse and tired. "I have nothing worth stealing, and I am too exhausted to be worth the trouble of harming. Do what you will." The resignation in those words stopped Nathan cold. He had expected fear, perhaps defiance, but not this bone-deep weariness. He pushed the door open wider, letting the last of the daylight spill into the boxcar's interior. The woman sat huddled in the corner farthest from the door, wrapped in what looked like 2 thin shawls that had seen better days. Her dress was torn at the hem and stained with travel dust. Dark hair fell in tangled waves around a face that might have been pretty if it were not so gaunt, so marked by exhaustion, and what looked like several days without proper food or rest. She held a small knife in one hand, but the blade trembled visibly, and Nathan doubted she had the strength to use it effectively. What caught his attention most, though, was the small bundle beside her. A carpetbag, worn nearly through in places, and next to it, carefully arranged on a flat piece of wood, were several items that spoke of a life interrupted. A small pot, no bigger than would serve one person. A tin cup with a dented side. 3 precious matches laid out in a row. And most striking of all, a collection of herbs and what looked like dried vegetables, sorted into neat little piles as though she had been taking inventory of her meager supplies. "My name is Nathan O'Brien," he said quietly, holding his hands out to show they were empty. "I am just passing through. I heard you cry out." The woman's eyes, he noticed, were a remarkable shade of green, like the creek water back home in spring. They studied him with a mixture of wariness and something else. Something that might have been the last flicker of hope before it guttered out entirely. "I am sorry to have disturbed your travel," she said, her voice carrying the cultured accent of someone educated, someone who had not started life expecting to end up in an abandoned rail car with 3 matches to her name. "I thought I saw a snake. It turned out to be a piece of rope." Nathan nodded slowly, taking in more details as his eyes adjusted to the dim interior. The woman was young, probably no more than 22 or 23. Her hands, though dirty, showed the kind of care that spoke of regular use of cream and gloves, at least until recently. This was no frontier woman born to hardship. This was someone who had fallen far and fast. "Have you eaten today?" he asked. The woman's jaw tightened. "I am managing quite well, thank you." It was a lie, and they both knew it. Nathan could see the hollows in her cheeks, The way her collarbone stood out too sharply above the neckline of her dress. He glanced again at the 3 matches, at the cold pot, and the carefully hoarded supplies. "I have camp to make anyway," he said, as if she had not spoken. "My fire will burn just as hot for 2 as for 1. You are welcome to share it, if you have a mind to cook whatever you have there. I have been eating jerky and hardtack for 3 days, and I would be grateful for anything that does not taste like leather." He said it casually, as if he were the one in need of help rather than offering it. Pride was a powerful thing, and this woman clearly had little left but her dignity. Nathan understood that. He had been 16 when his father died, leaving him and his mother with nothing but debts and a failing farm. He remembered what it felt like to accept charity, how it burned worse than hunger sometimes. The woman looked at him for a long moment. In the failing light, Nathan could see her weighing her options, calculating whether trusting a strange man was more dangerous than another night without a proper meal. "I do not even know if what I have is fit to eat anymore," she said finally, her voice barely above a whisper. "The vegetables have been dried so long, and I am not certain I remember my mother's recipe correctly." "I am not a picky man," Nathan said, "and I have water if that helps, fresh from the creek 2 miles back." That decided it. The woman's eyes went to his canteen with an intensity that told Nathan she had been rationing her water severely. "My name is Laura," she said quietly. "Laura Reeves." Nathan touched the brim of his hat. "Pleased to make your acquaintance, Miss Reeves. Now, if you will wait here a moment, I will get my things and build us a proper fire. Getting cold out there." He stepped back out into the evening, giving her space and time to collect herself. His mare nickered softly as he unpacked his bedroll and supplies. The sky had gone purple at the edges, stars beginning to prick through the gathering darkness. Nathan worked quickly, gathering deadwood from the scrub brush that grew along the abandoned rail line. There was plenty of it, dry and perfect for burning. He built the fire 20 feet from the boxcar door, close enough for warmth but far enough to give Laura Reeves room to feel safe. As he worked, he heard her moving inside the railcar, the soft sounds of someone gathering meager belongings with great care. When she emerged, she moved slowly, as if her body ached. She probably had been sleeping on the floor of that boxcar for several nights, Nathan thought. The hardwood floor would not have been kind to someone unused to such accommodations. Laura carried her small pot, her tin cup, and a cloth bundle that he assumed held her cooking supplies. She settled on the opposite side of the fire from where Nathan crouched, feeding the flames with careful precision. For a few minutes, neither of them spoke. The fire crackled and popped, throwing warm light across both their faces. Nathan watched as Laura unwrapped her bundle with fingers that shook slightly, whether from cold or hunger or nerves he could not tell. "I have a larger pot," he offered. "If that would help." Laura shook her head. "This will do. I have only enough for 1 serving anyway." She paused, then added quietly, "But I could make it stretch to 2 if you meant what you said about sharing." "I meant it." Nathan settled back on his heels, watching as Laura began to work. She filled her small pot halfway with water from his canteen, then set it carefully at the edge of the fire where the heat was steady but not too fierce. While the water warmed, she sorted through her dried vegetables with an almost reverent care. There were carrots, desiccated and shrunken to hard little nuggets. Onions that looked more like paper than food. Something that might have been potatoes, cut into thin slices and dried until they were crisp as autumn leaves. "My mother taught me to make this soup when I was 12, Laura said softly, her hands moving with more confidence now as she crumbled the vegetables into the warming water. She said it was what her grandmother made during the hard winter of 1856, when the crops failed in Ohio. 3 of these carrots would have been 6 fresh ones before drying. The onions were 2 full bulbs. The potatoes were 4 good-sized ones from our garden. She spoke as if she needed to explain to justify the humble ingredients. Nathan said nothing, just watched her work. From another fold of the cloth, Laura produced a small paper packet. She opened it carefully, and the scent of herbs drifted across the fire. Thyme, if Nathan was not mistaken, and something else. Sage, maybe. My father always said that anyone could cook with plenty, Laura continued, her voice distant now, lost in memory. But it took real skill to make something good with nothing. He was a doctor, and sometimes people could not pay him with money. They would pay with what they had. Dried goods, vegetables from their gardens, herbs they had gathered. My mother never wasted anything. She taught me how to make every scrap count. Laura's voice caught slightly on the past tense, and Nathan understood. Whatever had brought her to this abandoned rail car, to this desperate situation, had cost her more than just comfort. The water began to simmer, and Laura stirred it gently with a wooden spoon that she produced from her bag. The dried vegetables were rehydrating, swelling back toward their original size. She added the herbs with a careful pinch, then another. The smell that rose from the pot was simple but clean, wholesome in a way that made Nathan's stomach growl despite himself. "I have salt," Nathan offered, pulling a small pouch from his saddle bag. "And a little bacon grease if you want it." Laura's eyes lit up at the mention of grease, and Nathan knew he had guessed right. Fat was flavor, and more importantly, fat was calories that her body desperately needed. She accepted the small container he offered with a murmured thanks and spooned a dollop into the simmering water. The scent of the soup immediately deepened, became richer, more substantial. They sat in silence as the soup cooked, but it was a comfortable silence now, the kind that falls between people who have reached an unspoken understanding. Nathan poured himself coffee from his supplies and offered some to Laura. She accepted gratefully, wrapping her hands around the tin cup as if it were precious gold. "How long have you been in that boxcar?" Nathan asked gently. Laura stared into the fire. 5 days. I walked from Butte. It took me 2 days to get here because I had to rest frequently. I thought perhaps I could flag down a train, find a way east, but none have stopped. They all go straight through on the main line now. Where are you trying to get to? Pennsylvania. Philadelphia, if I can manage it. I have an aunt there, my mother's sister. I have not seen her in 10 years, but she is the only family I have left now. The now hung heavy in the air between them. Nathan took a sip of his coffee, letting the bitter heat of it ground him before he asked the question he needed to ask. What happened? Laura was quiet for so long that Nathan thought she might not answer. She stirred the soup slowly, watching the vegetables tumble and swirl in the fragrant broth. Finally, she spoke, her voice steady but empty of emotion, as if she were reciting facts that had happened to someone else. My father died of pneumonia last winter. My mother followed him 6 weeks later. The grief just took her, I think. She stopped eating, stopped sleeping. One morning she simply did not wake up. Laura paused, drawing a shaky breath. They left debts I did not know about. My father had been covering them, borrowing from one place to pay another. When he died, it all came due at once. The house, the furniture, even my mother's jewelry. It all went to creditors. You had nothing left. I had a trunk of clothes and $70. A man in Butte said he could get me work as a governess for a family heading to California. He seemed respectable, well-dressed. He said they would pay my passage in exchange for my service on the journey. It seemed like Providence. Laura's laugh was bitter. It was a lie, of course. There was no family. When I arrived at the address he had given me, it was a brothel. The woman who answered the door said I had been bought and paid for, that the $70 I had paid for processing fees meant I belonged to the house now. Nathan's hands tightened on his coffee cup, anger rising hot and sharp in his chest. It was an old story, one he had heard too many times. Young women, desperate and alone, preyed upon by men without conscience. "I ran," Laura said simply. "I left my trunk, everything I owned except what I could carry in my carpet bag. I ran and I kept running until I could not run anymore. That is when I found the boxcar." "Did they follow you for a while?" "I heard them calling, searching. But it was dark, and I know I hid my tracks as best I could. I do not think they will look this far out of town. I am not worth the trouble, not when there are other desperate girls arriving on every train." The soup was ready now, thick and steaming. Laura ladled half of it into Nathan's tin plate and kept the rest in her pot. She handed him a spoon, their fingers brushing briefly in the exchange. Her hands were ice cold despite the fire. Nathan took a bite and had to suppress the sound of pleasure that rose in his throat. It was just vegetable soup, simple and plain, but after 3 days of jerky it tasted like something from a fine hotel dining room. More than that, though, was the care in it. Every ingredient had been chosen and used with precision. The vegetables were perfectly tender, the broth savory and complex despite its humble origins. The herbs were balanced, not too much, not too little. This was not the cooking of someone going through motions. This was the cooking of someone who understood that food could be love made tangible, comfort distilled into a bowl. "This is remarkable," Nathan said, and meant it. Laura ducked her head, but he could see the pleased flush that colored her cheeks. "It is only soup." "It is more than soup, and you know it." They ate in silence, but Nathan could not stop stealing glances at the woman across the fire from him. In the warm light, with a little color returning to her face as the hot food and coffee did their work, he could see past the exhaustion and fear to the person beneath. Laura Reeves was not just pretty. She was striking, with the kind of fine-boned elegance that would make her stand out in any company. More than that, though, was the intelligence in her eyes, the careful way she observed everything around her, filing away information. When the soup was gone, Laura carefully cleaned her pot with a handful of dry grass, then rinsed it with a precious bit of water. She moved with the efficiency of someone who had learned not to waste anything, not motion, not supplies, not time. "You cannot go east with 3 matches and a bag of dried vegetables," Nathan said quietly. Laura's back stiffened. "I will manage." "I am not questioning your capability, Miss Reeves. I am stating a fact. It is September now. In a month, maybe less, the passes will start to close with snow. Even if you could walk to the next town, you do not have money for train fare to Philadelphia." "I will find work." "What kind of work? You are educated, I can hear it in your voice. You are cultured. But out here, those things do not count for much. The kind of work available to a woman alone, without references, without connections." He let the sentence trail off, knowing she understood. Laura's eyes flashed with anger, and Nathan was glad to see it. Anger meant fight, meant she had not given up entirely. "So what do you suggest, Mr. O'Brien? That I simply give up, find the nearest church and throw myself on the mercy of charity, indenture myself to the first family that will take me? I suggest you come with me to my employer's ranch. It is about 40 miles southeast of here, near the Yellowstone River. The family that owns it, the Carver family, they are good people. Mrs. Carver is always looking for help in the house, especially someone who can read and write, who knows numbers. Her youngest daughter is 8 years old and needs tutoring. The 2 older boys need someone to teach them mathematics beyond what their mother can manage." Laura stared at him. "You are offering me employment with people you know, based on a shared meal." I am offering you a chance to earn honest wages and have a safe place to sleep while you do it," Nathan corrected. "What you do with that chance is your business. Save your money, and by spring you can buy passage to Philadelphia if that is still what you want." "Why would you do this for a stranger?" Nathan considered the question, looking into the fire rather than at her. Why was he doing this? The easy answer was that it was the right thing to do, that his mother would have boxed his ears if he left a woman in need. But there was more to it than that, something he could not quite name. The careful way Laura had prepared their meal, the pride and pain in her voice when she spoke of her parents, the steel in her spine despite her desperate circumstances. Something in Laura Reeves called to something in Nathan O'Brien, a recognition that went bone deep. "My father died when I was 16, Nathan said slowly. "Left my mother and me with nothing but debts, just like your situation. A man named Thomas Carver found me trying to sell our plow horse to pay for my father's burial. He bought the horse for twice what it was worth, then hired me on at his ranch. Gave me work that let me keep my dignity while I learned to cowboy properly. When my mother got sick 3 years later, Mrs. Carver took her in, nursed her, sat with her at the end. I owe that family everything I am. If I can pay that forward by giving you the same chance I got, well, that seems right to me." Laura's eyes were bright with unshed tears. She blinked them back fiercely, but Nathan had seen them. "I would be in your debt," she said quietly. "You would be in no one's debt. You would earn your keep with your work, same as anyone. The Carvers do not believe in charity, but they believe in fair pay for fair work." Laura looked down at her hands, folded in her lap. Nathan could see her turning it over in her mind, weighing the risks of trusting him against the certainty of disaster if she stayed where she was. "When would we leave?" she asked finally. "Dawn tomorrow. It is a 2-day ride if we take it steady. You can ride." "I can, though I have not in several years. You can share my mare until we reach the ranch. She is gentle and sure-footed." Laura nodded slowly, then looked up at him with those remarkable green eyes. "Thank you, Mr. O'Brien. I do not know what I did to deserve this kindness, but I am grateful for it." "You made me the best soup I have had in months," Nathan said, trying to lighten the moment. "That alone deserves repayment." Laura's laugh was startled but genuine, and the sound of it did something strange to Nathan's chest, made it feel tight and warm at the same time. They talked for another hour as the fire burned down, carefully skirting around the deeper waters of their respective griefs, sticking instead to safer topics. Nathan told her about the Carver Ranch, about the cattle operation and the horse breeding that was Thomas Carver's passion. Laura told him about her childhood in Ohio, about the books she had read, and the music she had learned to play on the piano that was now lost along with everything else. When the fire had burned to coals and the night had grown cold enough to see their breath, Nathan spread his bedroll near the fire and gave Laura his blanket to supplement the thin shawls she had. "I cannot take your blanket," she protested. "You can and you will. I have my coat, and I am used to cold nights. You need your strength for the ride tomorrow." Laura accepted with reluctance, wrapping herself in the heavy wool. Nathan watched her return to the boxcar, saw her settle in the doorway where she could see the fire and the sky. He lay down with his saddle as a pillow, his coat pulled tight around him, and looked up at the stars scattered across the Montana sky like salt spilled on black cloth. Sleep was a long time coming. Nathan's mind kept returning to the woman in the boxcar, to the careful way she had prepared their simple meal, to the grief and determination in her voice when she spoke of her losses. He had told her the truth about owing the Carvers, about wanting to pay forward the kindness he had received. But he had not told her the whole truth, which was that something had shifted in him the moment he saw her in that railcar, something fundamental and irrevocable. Nathan O'Brien had been in love exactly once before, at 19, with a girl from town whose father owned the general store. It had ended when her father made it clear that a ranch hand with no prospects was not good enough for his daughter. Nathan had accepted it, moved on, focused on his work. In the 7 years since, he had kept his heart carefully guarded, unwilling to risk that kind of pain again. But Laura Reeves, with her pride and her sorrow and her remarkable vegetable soup, had somehow slipped past his defenses without even trying. It was too soon to call it love, Nathan told himself. It was compassion, admiration, the natural human response to someone in need. But even as he thought it, he knew he was lying to himself. The truth was, watching Laura cook over his fire, seeing the care and skill she brought to such a simple task, had done something to him. It had reminded him that there were people in the world who fought to maintain grace and dignity, even when everything was falling apart around them. It had shown him strength wrapped in gentleness, pride tempered with gratitude. It had melted something in his chest that he had not even known was frozen. Dawn came cold and clear, painting the eastern sky in shades of pink and gold. Nathan woke to find Laura already up, carefully packing her meager belongings back into her carpet bag. She had folded his blanket with military precision and left it beside the dead fire. "Good morning," she said when she saw him stirring. Her face was drawn, marked by another night of insufficient sleep, but her eyes were clear. "Morning," Nathan replied, getting to his feet and brushing the dust from his trousers. "How did you sleep?" "Well enough." It was a polite lie, but Nathan let it pass. They broke camp quickly, Nathan kicking apart the remains of the fire and scattering the ashes while Laura watched with her bag clutched in both hands. She looked small and fragile in the early morning light, and Nathan felt a surge of protectiveness that surprised him with its intensity. His mare, Daisy, was a good-natured bay with a white star on her forehead and the patience of a saint. She stood calmly as Nathan helped Laura mount, then swung up behind her. It was intimate, sitting this close, Nathan's arms around Laura as he held the reins. He could smell the road dust in her hair, could feel the tension in her body as she held herself carefully away from him. "You can relax," Nathan said quietly. "It is a long ride if you hold yourself that stiff the whole way." Laura gradually let herself lean back, just slightly, into the shelter of Nathan's chest. It felt right in a way that Nathan did not want to examine too closely. They rode east as the sun climbed higher, leaving the abandoned rail car and its memories behind. The Montana landscape unfolded around them in shades of gold and brown, the grass rippling in the wind like a vast inland sea. Mountains rose in the distance, already wearing caps of snow that would grow deeper as autumn turned to winter. Nathan kept Daisy to a steady walk, mindful of Laura's unfamiliarity with riding. They stopped frequently to rest, to water the horse at the small streams that cut through the grassland. At midday, Nathan shared his jerky and hardtack, apologizing for the poor quality of the food. "After last night's soup, this probably tastes like sawdust," he said. Laura smiled, a real smile that reached her eyes. "It tastes like sustenance, which is all that matters." They talked as they rode, their conversations ranging from the trivial to the profound. Nathan learned that Laura's favorite color was blue, the shade of the sky just after sunset, that she had once harbored dreams of becoming a teacher at a girls' academy, that she could speak French and a little German, relics of her mother's insistence on proper education, that she had never been further west than Kansas City before her parents died. In turn, Nathan told her about his work on the Carver Ranch, about the satisfaction of bringing in a difficult herd, the pride of breaking a particularly stubborn horse. He told her about the Montana winters, brutal and beautiful in equal measure, about the spring thaw when the world turned green almost overnight, about the kind of bone-deep weariness that came from a day of hard physical labor, and the equally deep satisfaction of a job well done. "You love it," Laura said, not a question but an observation. "I do," Nathan admitted. "It is not an easy life, but it is an honest one. I know what I am worth here. I know my place in the order of things. That must be a comfort." There was something wistful in her voice, and Nathan understood. Laura had lost her place in the world when her parents died. She was adrift, untethered, trying to find solid ground again. "You will find your place too," Nathan said. "Just takes time." They made camp that night beside a creek that ran clear and cold from the mountains. Nathan built another fire, and Laura insisted on cooking again. Using the last of her dried vegetables and some wild onions Nathan had spotted growing near the water. "You have a gift for this," Nathan said, watching her work with the same careful precision she had shown the night before. Laura looked up, surprised. "For cooking? It is just necessity, really." "No, it is more than that. You see it as necessity because you have been doing it so long, but there is art in what you do. Not everyone can take almost nothing and make it into something that tastes like home." Laura's eyes grew bright again, and she looked away quickly. "My mother used to say that cooking for someone was the purest form of caring, that putting love into food was a way of nourishing not just the body but the soul. Your mother was a wise woman. She was. I wish I had told her that more often while she was alive." They ate in companionable silence, and afterward, Nathan taught Laura how to read the stars for navigation. She was a quick study, picking up the patterns almost immediately. "You have a good mind," Nathan said, impressed. "The Carvers are going to be glad to have you. You sound very certain of that." "I am. Mrs. Carver is particular about who she allows around her children, but she values intelligence and education. You will fit right in." That night, Nathan made sure Laura had both blankets, and he slept close enough to the fire to stay warm. He woke once in the deep night to add wood to the flames and found Laura watching him from her bedroll. "Cannot sleep?" he asked quietly. "I keep thinking this is a dream," she said. "That I will wake up back in that boxcar, still alone, still without options." "It is not a dream. You are on your way to a new start. Because of you." Nathan shook his head. "Because you had the courage to accept help when it was offered. That takes strength, Miss Reeves. More strength than most people realize." Laura was quiet for a moment, then said, "Would you call me Laura? Miss Reeves sounds so formal, and after everything, it seems silly to stand on ceremony." "Laura," Nathan agreed, liking the way her name felt in his mouth. "And you should call me Nathan." "Nathan," she repeated and smiled. "Thank you, Nathan, for everything." "You are welcome, Laura." She fell asleep soon after, her breathing evening out into the slow rhythm of deep rest. Nathan stayed awake longer, watching over her, thinking about what tomorrow would bring. They reached the Carver Ranch late the following afternoon. It spread out across a valley where 3 creeks converged. The ranch house, a sprawling affair of logs and stone with a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides. Outbuildings dotted the landscape. Barns, corrals, a bunkhouse for the hands, a smokehouse, a root cellar. Cattle grazed in the distance, fat and healthy, while horses ran in a large paddock near the main barn. Thomas Carver was mending a section of fence when they rode up. His sleeves rolled to his elbows despite the autumn chill. He was a man in his late 40s, weathered and strong, with gray threading through his dark hair and the kind of eyes that missed nothing. "Nathan," he called out, straightening up. "Was not expecting you back so soon. Did you find that horse thief?" "Lost the trail near Anaconda," Nathan said, dismounting and then helping Laura down. Her legs were shaky from 2 days of riding, and Nathan kept a steadying hand on her elbow. "But I found something else. Mr. Carver, this is Laura Reeves." "Laura, Thomas Carver." Thomas took in Laura's bedraggled appearance, the carpet bag, the obvious exhaustion, and his expression shifted from curiosity to understanding. He pulled off his work glove and extended his hand. "Miss Reeves, welcome to the Circle C." Laura shook his hand, her grip firm despite her weariness. "Thank you, Mr. Carver. I apologize for the imposition. Nathan is a good judge of character. If he brought you here, there is a reason. Let us get you inside and fed properly, and then we can talk." Martha Carver was a woman of formidable presence, tall and strong with iron-gray hair and eyes the color of slate. She took one look at Laura and immediately shifted into the kind of brisk efficiency that brooked no argument. "Hot bath first," she declared. "Then food, then rest. You look like you have been through the wars, child." Laura, who had been holding herself together through sheer force of will, finally crumbled under the weight of such uncomplicated kindness. She managed a watery "thank you" before Martha swept her away toward the house, calling for her daughter Annie to heat water and prepare the guest room. Nathan was left standing in the yard with Thomas, who looked at him with a knowing expression. "Found her in trouble, did you?" "In an abandoned boxcar near Butt. She was trying to get east to family in Philadelphia. And you brought her here instead. I thought perhaps Mrs. Carver might have use for someone educated, someone who could help with the children's schooling." Thomas studied Nathan for a long moment, his expression unreadable. Then he smiled slightly. "Martha has been complaining for months that Annie needs proper tutoring in mathematics and literature, and that the boys need someone to drill their Latin. Seems like Providence, you bringing Miss Reeves to us. That is what I thought." "Is that all you thought?" Nathan met his employer's eyes steadily. "I do not know what you mean. Son, I have known you for 7 years. I have never seen you look at a woman the way you were looking at her just now." Nathan felt heat creep up his neck. "She was in need of help. And you are in need of a good woman, though you have been too stubborn to admit it. Nothing wrong with that, Nathan. Just be careful. She has been through trauma from the looks of it. Do not rush her." "I have no intentions of rushing anything," Nathan said stiffly. "I barely know her." Thomas laughed, clapping Nathan on the shoulder. "Keep telling yourself that. Now put your horse away and wash up. I want to hear the full story over dinner." Dinner that night was a loud, cheerful affair. The Carver family ate together in the big dining room, a habit Martha insisted on despite Thomas's protests that it was too formal for a ranch house. Laura, clean and rested and wearing a borrowed dress that Martha had produced from somewhere, sat between Annie and Martha, listening with wide eyes as the family talked over each other with the ease of long familiarity. Annie, 8 years old with her mother's gray eyes and her father's dark hair, had attached herself to Laura immediately, asking endless questions about Philadelphia and cities in general. The 2 boys, James and Samuel, 16 and 14 respectively, were more reserved but clearly curious about the strange woman their father had allowed at their table. Nathan, seated across from Laura, found himself unable to stop watching her. In the warm lamplight, clean and fed and safe, she was breathtaking. More than that, though, was the way she engaged with the family. She listened to Annie's chatter with genuine interest, answered the boys' questions about Eastern schools with patience, and deflected Martha's gentle probing about her circumstances with grace. When Martha brought out the main course, a roast beef with potatoes and carrots, Laura's eyes went to the vegetables with something like longing. "I used to help my mother prepare roasts," she said softly. "She had a special way of cooking the carrots with honey and thyme. I would love to learn it. Martha said immediately. "My carrots always come out mushy or undercooked, never just right. I would be happy to show you if I am staying long enough." Martha and Thomas exchanged a glance, one of those wordless communications that long married couples master. "We would like to offer you a position," Thomas said. "Annie needs tutoring in several subjects, and the boys could use help with their studies as well. In addition, Martha could use assistance with the household accounts and the planning of meals. We can offer you room and board, plus $20 a month. It is not much, but it would give you a chance to save for your journey east come spring." $20 a month was generous for that kind of work, and everyone at the table knew it. Laura's eyes filled with tears. "I accept," she said, her voice unsteady. Thank you so much." "No tears," Martha said briskly, though her own eyes were suspiciously bright. "You will earn every penny, I assure you. Annie is a handful, and the boys are stubborn as mules when it comes to their Latin." Annie giggled, and even the boys cracked smiles. Laura laughed, wiping her eyes, and the sound of it filled something in Nathan's chest that he had not known was empty. After dinner, while Martha and Annie showed Laura to her room, Nathan helped Thomas with the evening chores. They worked in comfortable silence for a while, checking the horses and making sure the barn was secure for the night. "She is a good woman," Thomas said eventually. "Been through hard times, but it has not made her bitter. That says something about character." "Yes, sir. Martha likes her. Says she has good manners and a kind heart. That is high praise coming from Martha." Nathan smiled. Martha Carver was not easily impressed. If she had given Laura her seal of approval, it meant something. "I meant what I said earlier," Thomas continued. "Be careful with her. She is fragile right now, even if she hides it well. Give her time to find her feet before you go making any declarations." "I am not planning on making declarations," Nathan protested, but his heart was not in it. Thomas just looked at him, and Nathan sighed. "Am I that obvious?" "Only to someone who knows you well. But Nathan, there is nothing wrong with being interested in a woman. You have been alone too long, focused too much on work. You are 26 years old. It is time you started thinking about building a life of your own. Even if she is planning to leave come spring, even then. Plans change, people change. Just see what happens." What happened over the next few weeks was that Laura settled into life at the Circle C like she had been born to it. She took over Annie's education with a firm but gentle hand, introducing the girl to poetry and literature that made learning feel like adventure rather than obligation. She drilled the boys in their Latin and mathematics with patience, and slowly, grudgingly, they began to improve. In the evenings, she worked with Martha on the household accounts, her neat handwriting and quick mind for figures bringing order to ledgers that had been maintained haphazardly at best. She reorganized the pantry, introduced new recipes, and transformed the evening meals from simple, functional food into something that felt like celebration. Nathan watched it all from a distance, trying and failing to keep his feelings in check. He saw the way Laura would pause sometimes in the middle of a task, her eyes going distant as grief caught her by surprise. He saw the careful way she rationed her smiles, as if happiness were a finite resource she could not afford to waste. He saw the nightmares that sometimes woke her in the deep hours, heard her pacing in her room until the fear passed. He wanted to go to her in those moments to offer comfort, but he held himself back. Thomas was right. Laura needed time and space to heal. Nathan could be patient. He had waited this long to feel something real for another person. He could wait a little longer, but patience became harder as October turned to November and the first snows began to fall. The ranch settled into its winter rhythm, the cattle brought down from the high pastures, the horses moved to the barn at night for warmth. The work was hard but satisfying, and in the evenings, the whole household would gather in the big parlor where a fire roared in the stone fireplace. It was on one such evening, with the wind howling outside and snow piling against the windows, that Laura pulled Nathan aside after dinner. "Can we talk?" she asked quietly. Nathan's heart jumped. Of course. They stepped out onto the enclosed porch, a space that was cold but private. Laura wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders and looked at Nathan with those green eyes that had haunted his dreams since the day they met. "I wanted to thank you," she said, "for everything you have done for me. The Carvers have told me that it was your idea to bring me here, that you vouched for me even though you had no reason to trust me." "You gave me plenty of reason to trust you," Nathan said. "The soup alone was enough." Laura smiled, but it faded quickly. "I have been thinking about the future, about my plans to go to Philadelphia in the spring." Nathan's chest tightened. And I am not sure anymore that it is what I want. My aunt and I were never close, and she has her own family now. I would be an imposition, another mouth to feed. Here I have purpose, I am useful. The Carvers have become like family to me. Annie is like the little sister I never had." "So you are thinking of staying?" Nathan asked, trying to keep the hope out of his voice. "I do not know. I feel like I am at a crossroads, and I do not know which path to take." She looked up at him, vulnerable in a way he had not seen since that first night in the boxcar. "What do you think I should do?" Nathan took a breath, choosing his words carefully. "I think you should do whatever makes you happy, whatever feels right in your heart. You have spent so long just surviving, Laura. Maybe it is time to start thinking about what you actually want, not just what you think you should want." "What if I do not know what I want?" "Then take time to figure it out. The Carvers are not going to push you to leave. They value you too much for that." Laura studied his face in the dim light from the parlor window. "What about you, Nathan? What do you value?" It was a dangerous question, loaded with implications. Nathan knew he should deflect, should keep things light and casual, but he had never been good at lying, especially to himself. "I value honesty," he said slowly. "Hard work, loyalty, the kind of strength that shows itself in quiet ways, not loud ones. Kindness that comes from choice, not obligation. The ability to make something beautiful out of simple ingredients." Laura's breath caught. "Nathan, I know it is too soon," he said quickly. "I know you have been through hell, and the last thing you need is pressure from me. But you asked what I value, and the truth is, I value you, Laura. I have since that first night watching you cook over my fire. I have never seen anyone put so much care into such a simple task, and it changed something in me." Tears were sliding down Laura's cheeks now, catching the light. "I do not know if I can be what you want me to be. I am still so broken inside." "I do not want you to be anything other than what you are," Nathan said, stepping closer. "And you are not broken, Laura. You are healing. That is different. Broken things are beyond repair. Healing things just need time." Laura let out a sound that was half laugh, half sob. "How can you be so sure?" "Because I was broken once too. When my mother died, I thought I would never feel whole again. But time passed and I healed. The scars are still there, but they do not hurt the way they used to. It will be the same for you." Laura reached out tentatively, and Nathan took her hand in his. Her fingers were still cold, even indoors, and he folded them in his larger, warmer hands. "I am afraid," she whispered. "Afraid to want something good because everything good in my life has been taken away." "I know, but you cannot live in fear forever. Eventually, you have to take a chance on happiness." Laura looked at their joined hands, then back up at his face. "What if we try this and I leave anyway? What if I wake up one day and realize I do not belong here?" "Then I will help you pack," Nathan said simply. "I am not asking for promises you cannot keep, Laura. I am just asking you to stay open to the possibility that this could work, that we could work." Laura was quiet for a long moment, and Nathan could see her working through it, weighing the risks against the potential rewards. Finally, she nodded. "Okay," she said softly. "I will stay open to it, but Nathan, I need you to be patient with me. I am not ready for anything fast or intense. I need slow, I need gentle." "You can have all the time you need," Nathan promised. "I am not going anywhere." Laura squeezed his hands, then pulled away gently. "Thank you for understanding." They went back inside, and Nathan felt like he could breathe again for the first time in weeks. It was not a declaration of love, not even close, but it was a beginning. And beginnings were enough. Over the next few months, Nathan courted Laura with a patience he had not known he possessed. He brought her small gifts. A book of poetry he bought on a rare trip to Butt, wildflowers pressed between pages, a smooth stone from the river that was the same green as her eyes. He made excuses to be near her, volunteering to help with tasks that traditionally fell outside his duties. He learned to read her moods, to know when she needed company and when she needed solitude. Laura, for her part, began to relax around him. The careful guardedness that had characterized her first weeks at the ranch slowly gave way to something softer, more open. She laughed more easily, smiled more freely. She began to share stories from her childhood without the shadow of grief darkening her words. She asked Nathan about his dreams for the future and actually listened to his answers like they mattered. In December, the ranch hosted a Christmas celebration, inviting neighboring families for dinner and dancing. Laura wore a dress that Martha had made for her, deep blue like the evening sky, and when Nathan asked her to dance, she accepted. They moved together to the music from Thomas's fiddle, and Nathan was acutely aware of Laura's hand in his, her other hand resting lightly on his shoulder. She was a good dancer, moving with a natural grace that made it easy to lead her. "You look beautiful tonight," Nathan said quietly and watched color bloom in her cheeks. "You look quite handsome yourself," Laura replied, her eyes sparkling with amusement. "I did not know cowboys cleaned up so well. I have hidden depths. I am learning that." They danced 3 more times that night, and when Nathan walked Laura back to the house afterward, she paused at the door and stood on her tiptoes to kiss his cheek. "Thank you for a wonderful evening," she said. Nathan touched the spot where her lips had been, his heart racing. "Anytime." Laura smiled and slipped inside, and Nathan walked back to the bunkhouse feeling like he could float. January brought a cold snap that froze the creeks and turned the world into a landscape of white and blue. The cattle huddled together for warmth, and the horses grew thick winter coats that made them look twice their normal size. Life contracted to the space between the house and the barn, the essential work of keeping the animals alive taking precedence over everything else. It was during one of these brutal cold spells that Laura revealed another of her many talents. Annie had come down with a fever, nothing serious but enough to worry Martha. Laura had disappeared into the kitchen and emerged with a pungent tea made from herbs she had gathered and dried the previous autumn. "My father's recipe," she explained, helping Annie drink it despite the girl's protests about the taste. "Willow bark for the fever, mint for the stomach, honey to make it palatable." Within a day, Annie's fever had broken, and Martha looked at Laura with new respect. "Your father taught you healing?" she asked. "Some. I used to help him in his practice when I was young. I know basic remedies, how to set a simple bone, how to stitch a wound." Thomas, who had been listening from his chair by the fire, leaned forward. "That kind of knowledge is valuable out here. The nearest doctor is 2 days' ride away. Having someone with medical training on the ranch could save lives." Laura ducked her head, uncomfortable with the praise. "I am not a doctor. I only know the basics." "That is more than most of us know," Martha said firmly, "and it is enough." Over the following weeks, word spread among the neighboring ranches that the Circle C had someone with medical knowledge. People began showing up at the door with minor ailments, cuts that needed stitching, children with fevers. Laura treated them all with patience and skill, never accepting payment but always grateful for the gifts of food or supplies that people left in thanks. Nathan watched with pride as Laura found yet another way to make herself indispensable to the community. She was building a life here, whether she realized it or not, putting down roots that went deeper than any temporary position. It was in February, during a brief warm spell that melted the top layer of snow and turned the yard to mud, that Nathan finally told Laura he loved her. They were alone in the barn, Nathan mending tack while Laura checked on a mare that was due to foal soon. The mare was calm under Laura's gentle hands, and Nathan marveled again at the way she seemed to bring peace wherever she went. "Laura," he said, setting down the bridle he had been working on. "I need to tell you something." Laura looked up from the mare, her eyes questioning. "What is it?" Nathan crossed to where she stood, careful not to spook the horse. "I love you. I know we agreed to take things slow, and I am not asking you to say it back or to change anything between us. But I needed you to know. I love you, Laura Reeves. I love your strength and your kindness and the way you turn simple ingredients into something that tastes like home. I love the way you care for Annie and the boys, the way you never waste anything, the way you keep learning and growing despite everything you have lost. I love you, and I will keep loving you whether you stay here or go to Philadelphia or decide to do something else entirely." Laura's eyes filled with tears, but she was smiling. "Nathan O'Brien, you are the best man I have ever known." "That is not an answer to the question I did not ask." Laura laughed, wiping her eyes. "I love you too. I have been trying not to, trying to protect myself from getting hurt again. But it is no use. You melted my heart that first night, cooking over your fire, and every day since has just made me love you more." Nathan pulled her into his arms, careful and gentle, giving her every chance to pull away if she wanted. But Laura did not pull away. Instead, she wrapped her arms around his waist and buried her face in his chest. "I am still afraid," she said, her voice muffled. "I know. But I do not want to be afraid anymore. I want to be brave enough to choose happiness, to choose you." Nathan held her tighter, feeling like his heart might burst. "You are the bravest person I know." They stood like that for a long time, holding each other in the quiet barn with the mare looking on placidly. Finally, Laura pulled back just enough to look up at Nathan. "Kiss me," she said. Nathan cupped her face in his hands and kissed her softly, sweetly, pouring all his love and patience and hope into that single kiss. Laura sighed against his mouth, her hands coming up to tangle in his hair, and for a moment, the whole world narrowed to just the two of them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Laura was smiling in a way Nathan had never seen before, open and joyful and free. "I am staying," she said. "No matter what happens, I am staying here. This is home now." Nathan kissed her again and again, until they were both laughing breathlessly. They were married in April, when the snow had melted and the valley was turning green with new growth. The ceremony was small, just the Carver family and a few hands from neighboring ranches, held in the parlor of the main house with Martha's carefully tended roses decorating every surface. Laura wore a dress of cream-colored linen that Martha had helped her sew, with lace at the collar and cuffs. She had woven wildflowers into her hair, and Nathan thought he had never seen anything more beautiful in his life. Thomas Carver performed the ceremony, having been ordained as a minister back in his youth. His voice was steady and sure as he spoke about love and commitment, about the bonds that tie two people together through good times and bad. Do you, Nathan Andrew O'Brien, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? I do, Nathan said, his eyes never leaving Laura's face. And do you, Laura Marie Reeves, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? I do, Laura said, her voice clear and strong. Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you husband and wife. Nathan, you may kiss your bride. Nathan gathered Laura into his arms and kissed her while everyone cheered. When they broke apart, both of them were crying and laughing at the same time. The celebration afterward was joyful and loud, with food that Laura had helped prepare and music from Thomas's fiddle. They danced until late into the night, and when it was finally time for Nathan and Laura to retire to the small cabin that Thomas had helped Nathan build on the far edge of the property, the whole household cheered them on their way. The cabin was simple but sturdy, one large room with a fireplace at one end and a bed at the other. Nathan had built it himself over the winter, working in the evenings and on Sundays, determined to have a home ready for his bride. Laura had helped with the finishing touches, sewing curtains for the windows and making quilts for the bed. Home, Laura said softly, looking around at the space that was truly theirs. Our home, Nathan agreed, pulling her close. They made love that night with tenderness and care, learning each other's bodies with gentle hands and whispered words. Afterward, they lay tangled together in the quilts Laura had made, listening to the night sounds of the ranch settling around them. Are you happy? Nathan asked, stroking Laura's hair. Happier than I ever thought I could be again, Laura said. You saved me, Nathan, not just from that boxcar, but from despair. You gave me hope when I had none left. You saved me too, Nathan said. I did not even know I was lonely until I met you. But I was deeply lonely. You filled spaces in my heart I did not know were empty. Laura kissed his chest, right over his heart. We saved each other then. I guess we did. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm after that. Nathan continued his work on the ranch, now with the added satisfaction of knowing he was building something for his family, not just himself. Laura continued teaching the Carver children and helping Martha with the household. But she also began to establish herself as the community healer, treating everything from minor injuries to serious illnesses with the skills her father had taught her. In October, nearly a year after Nathan had first found her in that abandoned boxcar, Laura told him she was pregnant. A baby, Nathan repeated, stunned and elated. We are going to have a baby. In the spring, Laura confirmed, her hand resting on her still flat stomach. Are you happy? Nathan swept her into his arms, spinning her around until she was laughing and demanding to be put down. Happy does not begin to cover it. The pregnancy was not easy. Laura suffered from sickness that lasted well into her 4th month, and Nathan worried constantly. But Laura bore it with the same quiet strength she brought to everything, and by the time winter arrived, she was glowing with health. They spent that winter preparing for the baby, Nathan building a cradle from wood he had carefully selected, and Laura sewing tiny clothes and blankets. The Carver household was excited, everyone offering advice and help in equal measure. Annie, now 9, was particularly thrilled at the prospect of a baby to help care for. In March 1885, as the ice was breaking up on the creeks and the first green shoots were pushing through the snow, Laura went into labor. It was a long, difficult birth that lasted through the night and into the next day. Nathan stayed with her the whole time, holding her hand and whispering encouragement, even as his heart twisted with fear. Finally, as the sun was setting on the second day, their son was born. He came into the world with a lusty cry that announced his displeasure at the whole process, and Nathan felt tears streaming down his face as Martha placed the tiny, perfect baby in his arms. "A boy," Martha said, smiling. "A fine, healthy boy." Laura, exhausted but radiant, held out her arms for the baby. Nathan placed him gently in her embrace and watched as she looked down at their son with wonder. "He is perfect," Laura whispered. "What should we name him?" Nathan asked. Laura looked up at Nathan with those green eyes he loved so much. "What about Andrew, after your father? Andrew Thomas O'Brien." Nathan's throat tightened. His father had not been a perfect man, but he had done his best with what he had. Naming their son after him felt like honoring that effort. "Andrew Thomas O'Brien," Nathan repeated. "It is perfect." Baby Andrew was a good baby, healthy and strong, with his mother's green eyes and his father's dark hair. He fit into the life of the ranch as naturally as breathing. And Nathan had never known it was possible to love something as much as he loved his son and his wife. 2 years later, Laura gave birth to their second child, a daughter they named Grace Martha, after no one in particular but everything that Laura said the name represented. "Grace, because we have been given so much more than we deserve," Laura explained, holding their newborn daughter. "Martha, for the woman who took me in and treated me like a daughter." Martha Carver, present at the birth as she had been for Andrew's, cried openly at the honor. The years passed in a blur of work and love and the endless tasks of raising children on a frontier ranch. Andrew grew into a serious, thoughtful boy who loved horses and had his mother's gift for healing. Grace was wild and joyful, always laughing, always moving, keeping both her parents on their toes. In 1889, when Andrew was 4 and Grace was 2, Thomas Carver made Nathan an offer. "I am getting old," Thomas said, though at 53 he was still as strong as most men half his age. "And the boys are not interested in ranching. James wants to study law, and Samuel has his heart set on becoming a teacher. I need someone I can trust to help me run this place, maybe eventually take it over when I am ready to slow down." "You want me to be your partner?" Nathan asked, hardly daring to believe it. "Equal shares in the cattle operation and the horse breeding. You have earned it, Nathan. You and Laura both. This ranch is as much yours as it is mine now." Nathan shook Thomas's hand, overcome with gratitude. That night, he told Laura about the offer over dinner in their cabin, which had been expanded twice now to accommodate their growing family. "We are going to be partners in the Circle C," he said. "Can you believe it?" Laura smiled, reaching across the table to take his hand. "I can believe it. You have worked hard for this, Nathan. You deserve it." "We deserve it," Nathan corrected. "None of this would have happened without you." Laura squeezed his hand. "We make a good team, the best team." Life continued its steady progression. The ranch prospered under Nathan and Thomas's joint management. Andrew and Grace grew, joined eventually by a third child, a boy they named Samuel Peter, and then a fourth, another daughter named Elizabeth Rose. The cabin had to be expanded again, growing from 1 room to 4 with a proper kitchen and a parlor where the family could gather in the evenings. Laura's reputation as a healer grew until people came from as far as 50 miles away to seek her help. She never charged for her services, but the community supported her in other ways, with gifts of food and supplies and labor. When the cabin needed expansion, men from 3 neighboring ranches showed up to help build, repaying the debt they owed to the woman who had saved their children, their wives, their parents. Nathan watched it all with pride and love, amazed every day by the woman he had married. Laura had taken the grief and loss that could have destroyed her and transformed it into purpose, into healing for others. She had taken the skills her father taught her and used them to build something good and lasting. On their 10th wedding anniversary, Nathan took Laura on a picnic to the spot where he had first found her, where that old railcar still sat rusting on its forgotten siding. Time had not been kind to the boxcar. It was even more decrepit now, the wood rotting and the metal rusting through in places. But it still stood, a monument to endings and beginnings. "I cannot believe it has been 10 years, Laura said, standing in the doorway of the old rail car and looking at the spot where she had huddled all those years ago, desperate and alone. "Best 10 years of my life," Nathan said, coming to stand behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. Laura leaned back against him, fitting perfectly into his embrace. "Do you ever think about what would have happened if you had ridden past that day, if you had not stopped to investigate?" "Sometimes, but I do not like to think about it too much. The idea of a world where I never met you is too terrible to contemplate." Laura turned in his arms to face him. At 33, she was even more beautiful than she had been at 22. Motherhood and happiness had given her a fullness, a contentment that radiated from every pore. The shadows that had haunted her eyes were gone, replaced by laugh lines and the deep satisfaction of a life well lived. "I love you, Nathan O'Brien," she said. "More today than yesterday, more tomorrow than today." "I love you too, Laura O'Brien. You and our children are the best thing that ever happened to me." They kissed in the doorway of that old rail car, where everything had begun, and Nathan felt the same surge of love and protectiveness he had felt that first night, watching Laura cook over his fire. That soup had melted his heart, shown him what love could look like when it was poured into simple acts of care and creation. And every day since, Laura had continued to pour that love into everything she did, into their children, their home, their community. The years continued to pass, bringing changes and challenges. Thomas Carver passed away peacefully in his sleep in 1895, leaving his share of the ranch to Nathan with Martha's full blessing. Martha lived another 10 years after that, long enough to see all 4 O'Brien children grown and starting families of their own. Andrew married a schoolteacher from Butt and took over the horse breeding operation, expanding it until Circle C horses were known throughout Montana Territory for their quality and temperament. Grace, wild and joyful as ever, married a surveyor and traveled with him throughout the West, writing letters full of adventure that Laura read aloud to the family on Sunday evenings. Samuel became a doctor, fulfilling his mother's dreams by studying medicine in Philadelphia before returning to Montana to open a practice. Elizabeth, the youngest, never married but became a renowned midwife and herbalist, carrying on her mother's healing work. Nathan and Laura grew old together, their love deepening with each passing year. They faced sorrows, as all long lives must. They buried friends and family. They weathered economic downturns and harsh winters and the inevitable losses that come with ranching. But through it all, they had each other. And that was enough. On a warm September evening in 1923, exactly 40 years after Nathan had found Laura in that abandoned boxcar, they sat together on the porch of their home, watching the sun set over the mountains. The cabin had been expanded so many times over the years that it was now a proper house, with 8 rooms and a wide porch that wrapped around 3 sides, just like the main ranch house had. Laura's hair was white now, and Nathan's back was not as straight as it once had been. But they still held hands like young lovers, their fingers intertwined with the ease of long practice. "You remember that soup you made the first night we met?" Nathan asked. Laura laughed, the sound still as musical as it had been when she was young. How could I forget? I was so nervous I nearly burned it, even though there was almost nothing to burn. It was the best soup I ever tasted. You were just hungry. No, Nathan said seriously, turning to look at his wife. It was more than that. It was the love you put into it, the care. You took almost nothing and made it into something that tasted like home. That was when I knew. Knew what? That I was going to love you for the rest of my life. Laura's eyes, still that remarkable shade of green even after all these years, filled with tears. Nathan O'Brien, after 40 years of marriage, you can still make me cry. I hope those are happy tears. The happiest. They sat in comfortable silence, watching as the stars began to appear in the darkening sky. 4 children, 12 grandchildren, and 3 great-grandchildren so far, Nathan thought. A ranch that had grown from a single partnership to a thriving operation that employed 30 people and supported twice that many families. A community that had been built as much by Laura's healing hands as by his hard work. Not bad for a cowboy who had stumbled across a desperate woman in an abandoned rail car 40 years ago. Thank you, Laura said softly. For what? For stopping that day. For offering me your fire. For giving me a chance when I had nothing left to offer in return. Nathan squeezed her hand. You had everything to offer. I just had the good sense to recognize it. Laura laid her head on Nathan's shoulder, and they watched the stars together as night fell over the ranch that had become their legacy, their home, their whole world. The abandoned boxcar where it had all begun was long gone now, finally collapsed under the weight of time and weather. But the love that had started there remained, strong and true. A foundation that had supported not just 2 lives but an entire family, an entire community. And if you had asked Nathan O'Brien in those final golden years of his life what his greatest accomplishment was, he would not have said the ranch he had built, or the cattle operation he had grown, or the horses he had bred. He would have said it was the woman beside him, the love they had created together, and the family that love had produced. Because in the end, that was what mattered. Not the land or the money or the reputation, but the love. The love that started with a simple bowl of soup, cooked over a fire by a desperate woman who refused to let hardship steal her grace. The love that melted a lonely cowboy's heart and showed him what it meant to build something that would last. That love was their legacy, passed down through generations, a reminder that even in the hardest times, even when everything seemed lost, there was always hope, always the possibility of new beginnings, always the chance that a stranger's kindness could transform into something eternal. And somewhere in Montana, on a ranch that had been built by love and sustained by care, that legacy lived on, as enduring as the mountains themselves.